Introducing your hosts from Collingwood, Ontario, Canada, Jack Edwards, and his partner from Dallas, Texas, by way of Port Arthur, Texas, Big George. Together, they are the North-South Connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome to the WCW Bonanza. That's what this is. This is talking WCW. It's going to be so great. I'm so excited. George, how you feeling? How's Texas?
Texas is always going to be Texas. It's going to be warm. It's going to be cool. It's going to be nice. It's going to be hot. It's going to be all the things that you need it to be. But it's Texas, so we're doing our thing down here. How's things in Canada?
It's not super cold, but it's we're figuring it out. But I'm excited, George. I'm excited to talk this topic eventually, but let's talk about let's kick it off hot, because you and I were talking off the air and I am steamed about this. The WWE came out with its and we're going to praise them at the end of the show with some of their content, so don't worry about it. But the WWE came out their list of the top however many heel turns. I didn't get past the top 5, and this is going to be the get off my lawn point of the show. But the fact that Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan were not mentioned devalues the entire list. Andre the Giant turning heel was the biggest angle they'd ever run up until that point, and for many years afterwards. Like, Andre came out with Bobby Heenan. That thing was shot on aired mid-February. WrestleMania was March 29th. And it's like, there's a lot of there's not that much time in between, which speaks to the WWE popularity at that point. But I'm just like, not everything new is the greatest. Like, you have to recognize how we got here. And I think that's one of the angles that got us to this point. It was a launching pad. It was a huge deal. And whether it's 93,000 or 77,000, that's a lot of people to see a wrestling match. And, they did 33 million people on NBC, and I'm just like, I think that needs to be on the list. I get it. So, George, that's sticks in my craw, because that's the angle. When people are like, what's the angle of childhood? That's the angle. Like, Andre walked out with Bobby Heenan, and Bobby Heenan was in it. Come on. We can never disrespect guys like that. And to leave them off that is disrespectful, because those two guys who helped build this business. And they together, they combined to create that heel turn, and that did big money, massive money. And Andre could barely move. It's just a credit to, but it's, a credit to Heenan, a credit to Andre, how he sold it. Is just can't believe that's not on. I don't even know where it ranks on the list. I can't even tell you, but it should be in the top 5 at the very least.
I kind of had an opinion on their number 1. They said John Cena's heel turn was the greatest heel turn in WWE history. And I'm thinking to myself, if you say John Cena's number 1 in history, I don't always agree with everybody's opinion, but I'm definitely not agreeing with that. I'm not saying that it wasn't one of the greatest heel turns in history, but it wasn't the greatest heel turn in history. Hulk Hogan's heel turn in history was still bigger than that, in my opinion. It's not necessarily something that I think that a lot of people was looking at as far as him being the third man, him actually even turning heel. People couldn't see him wearing another color. So other than red, white, and blue, or yellow and red, Hulk Hogan was a childhood hero. He was everything that your parents wanted you to grow up to be, all that good stuff. So I'm not 100% sure that, a lot of people understand how big that was. And you can kind of go back to Bash at the Beach and watch that match now. Because on YouTube now with the WCW network, they definitely got a little bit of the pull there where you can start off by watching some of the greatest matches of all time in WCW. So that one, for me, is one of the points that you can kind of take and say, yeah, we got to go back and look at that, because, of course, I would like to sit these side by side and see about the heel turn. yeah, in this day and age, John Cena would be considered a bigger star in the sense of he was available for the last 20 years. But don't forget who Hulk Hogan was. Even though we don't necessarily have the great eye to eye compensation as far as what we like
Yeah.
to
Like
see, but
we
he
got
was
it.
who he was for the business. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I feel like his heel turn was still one of the greatest heel turns of all time.
Seismic shift. It was like it was what turned the tide, and it was what created the Attitude Era. Like because that
The Monday Night Wars were
yeah, the
nothing
Monday Night Wars were on from that point.
until the NWO
Yeah.
was established. And the crazy thing was the buildup was so great for the NWO that
Yeah.
you could even say if the NWO failed, it was because the hype was too great.
Yeah, but
You
it
could say
didn't.
that, but it didn't. It worked, and it went for a long time. Some would say it lasted too long, but at the same time, it's just like that's one of those moments I feel like you kind of have to appreciate and understand exactly what that moment really was before you kind of start de-ranking it in the list as something that happens just today is the greatest thing that ever happened in life. Maybe in your life, but not in the life of wrestling. I apologize if that offends anybody, but it's just like certain shit ranks a certain spot. Like I'm not gonna say my favorite wrestler is your favorite wrestler, and he should rank this way on your list. I'll never say that. But I also think that there's a level of appreciation for certain stars and certain, certain events that kind of happen within the business. You kind of have to recognize that. Like that shift is recognized as one of the greatest moments in history. I'm not saying that the John Cena heel turn won't, but it won't last as long as anything else because we know John Cena is not necessarily staying for a whole 2-3 years more, and his heel turn would only be so long. And of course, with that being said, he's going to give everything that he has to make this heel turn work. And I don't blame him. I'm not saying that his heel turn won't be remembered in history because it will be, because this is the first time we actually seen John Cena be able to kind of say, I'm not doing that, or I'm a heel now, or I can, be a certain way. And at this very moment, we still don't exactly know what kind of heel he'll be.
Yeah, it's a great turn, but I'm just saying, like, let's be honest. George, before we get to our topic, I'll probably talk a bit about that cage match on Raw, is we've launched a website to go along with this podcast. And I'm sure most of you know, probably a lot of you, I've been a journalist for 23 years. It's my day job, and I have a lot of experience covering a lot of things, and I love pro wrestling, so I decided to combine the two. I got some interesting stories to tell, and I've told George a few that are coming along the pike, so it should be interesting. So we hope you'll check it out. It's 5countwrestling.com. And it's a little pet project here, and we're excited about it.
I'm definitely excited about it. It's going to have some great material, some great reads, some great interviews, a little column about us to kind of explain how we got this thing jumped off. Even the whole 5-count world is a little bit going to be elaborated in there. So take your time, take some reads, take some, time to kind of look at us, in a different light. So
look, we're going
to, you got a chance.
Yeah, I got a few things coming up. So, I got a couple things in the pike. And I've already done an interview for a story on a guy, and it's going to be I'm going to tell stories about, different parts of wrestling, the whole culture of it, and tell stories of maybe some guys you've never heard of, and maybe some guys you've forgotten, because it's one of my skills in life is to tell stories through the written word, and so I'm excited to do it. But on to the cage match, which I'm sure I'll be able to write about a few. On to the cage match. Listen. I enjoyed it. I mean, did they use the finishes a lot? Yes. But, I mean, that horse is out of the barn. That's been happening a lot. I thought it was great. I thought it was, I love the finish. What a perfect way to set up, that triple threat. Now everybody's invested. We're going to, it's just, I thought it was a great ending. I'm interested to see, along with that, where they go with Rhea, because she's looking really she's going to be involved in something. I'm a big, I'm a big Rhea Ripley fan. So absolutely. But those are the two things from Raw, and that two of the things I really enjoyed. Cody's promo, of course, was really good. It was great on SmackDown too. I thought Cena was supposed to show up in the Garden. It
would have been right. There. In my mind, I feel like Cena should have showed up in the Garden, heel turn. It's Madison Square Garden. what else do you think should happen at that moment? But the cage match was definitely something that they can actually say highlighted tonight, and I can see you not wanting Cena to show up, not to take the light away from the cage match in the sense, and Roman returning. I
Yeah.
mean, to be honest, that kind of took the cake for that night. It got everybody buzzing about where Roman is and what Roman is going to do, how he's going to move, and what is he going to be a part of as far as WrestleMania is. Is Roman not going to be a part of WrestleMania? Everybody predicted this triple threat. Nobody knew how. Nobody knew how it was going to be started, and this cage match was perfect. Because at the end of the cage match, to be honest, what I liked about the match the most, Seth Rollins did a number that nobody else can just kind of say they do. Taking a couple GTSs, breaking out the finishes, switch finishes, going off the top ropes. I mean, they did everything in that match. Not everybody's able to do. So I say this. You can say they had too many finishes in the match, but that's not how the match is supposed to be won. And you can't write a match to be perfect and still have it to be a certain way. It doesn't go like that. Some of the matches are impromptu because they're the way they're built.
That's the only critique I'd have is about the too many finishes. I don't know if you necessarily needed it. And I mean, I know they didn't do a lot of blood, which I was okay with. I mean, like, I think they told a good story. They didn't really need, I don't know. Trying to remember, did anyone bleed? I don't think anyone bled, right?
No. And I think that's he might have bled a little bit from the mouth, maybe, but not nothing.
It wasn't like nobody was busted.
Mask.
Yeah, huge open. They told a good story, and I was happy with it. So, like, I'm excited to see what Cena says. I mean, that's the thing for me. What's his promo? What's he gonna look like walking out?
I think he's gonna have because they have a longer way to the ring now at points in times, like in pay-per-views and things like that. I feel like he'll have a new entrance where it kind of takes a little bit to get to the ring, maybe. Probably have a little bit of a different swagger walking down to the ring, maybe tear up a couple signs. I don't know if he's gonna be that type of heel where he's tearing up signs and doing things like that, or like a Logan Paul, who, in my mind, if you watch the show Monday, y'all seen Logan Paul come out there and offer his soul to The Rock. And I'm thinking to myself, John has been wanting Logan Paul to hop on that Rock train for a little bit now. And I'm
Chris
like,
too, he mentioned it. Like Chris mentioned it too.
Yes. And I'm like, nah, man, leave that man off of there. He's definitely gonna be doing something different. Now they got AJ Styles.
AJ Styles, and whatever gets AJ on the show, I'm a fan of. So
exactly.
Whatever gets him on the show.
AJ Styles need a spot at the top, but at the same time, of course, he got to work his way back up there. So, but no, back to the cage match, I felt like it was one of those matches that you can kind of call back to kind of be of a great moment. There were moments in the cage match where I felt like they could have ended the show.
Yeah,
they didn't. Which
they gave him a lot of time.
That. Yeah, I kind of like that. I felt like they was able to kind of get enough out in the match that kind of made it look like they was just tired of beating each other's ass for a certain point. And then it just looked like I'm doing all this just to hurt you. So they kind of had that how much your hate drives you kind of match, which is always a good match to have with certain competitors. So I think that you can only have that kind of match with certain people. CM Punk and Seth Rollins was perfect for this cage match.
Yeah.
The way they ended it, in my opinion, was great because of course, Roman coming in, Seth gets the win. So that kind of, technically makes it look like Seth Rollins, defeated him in the match. But at the same time, it's context. Roman pulled that man smooth out that goddamn ring and gave him the Superman punch of a lifetime. And then, kind of got with the spears.
And gave him the stomp. He gave him the stomp, too.
Yes. And you know what? One better. This is the thing that kind of made me, all right, here we go. When he turned over to CM Punk and seen Paul Heyman in that ring.
Yeah, like
over to CM Punk. And I'm thinking to myself, at this point in time, I wonder who he gonna hit first. Because in my mind, this is me. And maybe I have a whole bunch of mentalities that's just not necessarily right to be using against other people. But if I see my man's in here consoling somebody I just don't like, I'm hitting your ass too. Because what are you doing? You know what side is your bread buttered on? If you want to go over there, stay on that side. But I think
what's the
slowly but
favor?
surely,
What's the favor?
that,
Dear
that
wise
that
man.
still, yeah, that still is to come. And I think, and in hindsight, I feel like in the near future, not even near, but in the future, we're gonna have a decision made by Paul Heyman where he ended up switching sides. I think that'll happen. And I'm not saying that it's gonna happen now, but we're getting to the point where, you know, Roman might not necessarily need a wise man. And it's starting to show that the wise men don't necessarily want to be around. So
I'd be interesting where they go with that because because you'd have to like either Roman would have to turn heel or Paulie would and Punk. One of them's going to turn.
well, Punk is easier in my mind because honestly, there's nothing that says he's a babyface right now. Honestly, he's more of a vigilante.
Well, the crowd says it. That's what
they might like him. They might like
they
him.
Love him.
His attitude is still, he
could be a really good heel. Like, I mean, he could be a really, really good heel. Like, but the question is, do they want that? So, I mean, but again, like they throw that in and, that little curveball, where are they going to go? They make you want to, like, that's the thing. They make you want to, I think there's so much compelling stuff to that match. Like you're talking about in one match, you have CM Punk and Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. Like, that's such a compelling feature. I'm not a fan of triple threats either. And I was like, I didn't really like it for Roman, but I get it now. I understand it. I just think, but yeah, so I'm excited. But George, I'm excited tonight because we're talking one of our favorite topics, favorite subjects, couple old heads talking about the one, the only, the WCW, which, because we're talking about it, is because the WWE put out a WCW YouTube channel. And I had the WWE Network up here, and it was awesome. You had every WCW pay-per-view, everything. It was fantastic. And I kind of missed it because I love watching the old WCW stuff. And I tell you what, when I found that out, it's like, I knew what I was doing after work that night. That was for sure. I mean, so much good stuff, George. What did you think? I sent it to you. What did you think?
Well, after you sent it to me, I spent about an hour and a half just muddling through content. One of the first things I pulled up on was it was a 3-on-3. It was Goldberg, Sting, and I think I can't remember who the third was at this moment, but it was them versus Rick Steiner, Kevin Nash, and Sid Vicious. And I'm gonna tell you right now. Oh, that's who it was. It was Sting, Goldberg, and Hogan.
Dark side of ADHD
Yeah, hold on, I got it right here.
And I'll tell you this: that match was just like a nostalgia rewind because they just had
Goldberg, Hogan, Sting, Nash, Steiner, Vicious.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that match just kind of had the feels of WCW. Now, did it turn a couple heads? Because that match was important because I think that was the first match that Hulk Hogan had went babyface after being NWO Black and White for all that time.
Yeah.
So
that's about the time the ship started sinking.
Right. And that was
right
kind of the demise of WCW too. Like that was like them swinging for the fences because I'm gonna tell you right now, that match kind of started off the night in a sense. And I'm not after that, it's just like if your best match is at the beginning of the night, you really have nothing planned for me at the end of the night. And that's what WCW has kind of started doing at that point. But great matches. Some of your favorite talent. Like y'all love Booker T. But y'all need to go back and
Bret Hart's on here.
Y'all need to go back and watch some of the matches that he had with some of the talent that people talk about. I feel like people talk about Sting like he is a wrestler who just couldn't give it up and don't really realize how good Sting actually was. So you can actually take some time to go back and watch some of that stuff and kind of take some time to kind of see the evolution of Sting, the evolution of the NWO, the evolution of who is Hulk Hogan and why he's so big to the business. Like some of the biggest acquisitions from WWE came over to WCW and kind of had huge nights. Like Luger's first night in WCW
The
was
first Nitro.
the first night, right?
Yeah.
And you can right now go back and watch that. So sometimes you have to have these moments where you have to kind of understand, like, this is why you were watching this. This is why you were trying to, get to the TV at 6 or 7 o'clock at night and try to get on TNT and see, what was happening. Like, So I got some moments kind of lined out that I feel like a lot of people should watch, and this kind of show is going to be built off of. Just go back and watch this real quick. All this is WCW material. All of it's good stuff, but at the same time, you're going to get a good understanding of what it actually was. So, John, I know you got a moment in there that you probably want to hit.
I do. My message is from an old head, is what they call me. There's a lot of people who are out there on, social media and all that, who might be new wrestling fans, like newer than WCW. They may not have seen it. They may have just started watching wrestling. They may have never watched WCW. Whatever the case is, I hope tonight, my only goal is hopefully one person is watching this podcast that can go watch some of the stuff, because there's some fantastic stuff. And I'm going to kick it off with one of my things that I wanted to watch. It wasn't in totality the best pay-per-view of all time, but it was very, very good. I thought it had a lot of good things. Was Super Brawl, the first Super Brawl in 1991. If you go back and watch it for no other reason, everything else I mentioned, but the one reason you need to go back and watch this is Arn Anderson wrestles beautiful Bob Eaton for the World Television title. That's the main reason to watch. And if you've never seen those two guys wrestle, and you never seen them wrestle together, like, it's something to behold. But that show also had a great match. Tate Fist, Barry Windham versus Flying Brian. It had the Steiners versus Sting and Luger. Ric Flair worked wrestled Tatsumi Fujinami. I believe that was also the debut of Oz, which also deserves a mention to be watched. So it's just got a lot of great stuff in there, and it's on there. A full event is on there, and I'm like, there's some cool shit in that, like just a lot of wrestlers you may not have heard of, but some people that deserve to be recognized for sure. Definitely. So that's my first pick, George, is Super Brawl. It gets a little newer than that, but not much.
I would expect that from you. I think that's something that you kind of have to allude to. But in 1996, there were a lot of big things that kind of happened that kind of sparked a lot of things. There's a mystery behind certain things that kind of, has still been yet to be confirmed in my mind, but this is something that, kind of led to it all. In 1996, Sting took the black and white face paint and made his debut as Crow Sting. Why does that matter? Because that's how you know Sting. A lot of people don't know that Sting was a really colorful character back in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s.
I love Surfer Sting. I was such a big fan of that guy.
Surfer Sting was buff. He had a look. He had the feel. He had the excitement. He had everything. He had a nice move set.
Our man Chris is in with us.
But also, you kind of had him feel a kind of way in 1996 that kind of made heads turn a little bit. Everybody was kind of shocked that Surfer Sting was out here talking like this. Like, all his friends and fans had turned their backs on him. It didn't look good. Now, rumor has it that it was supposed to be Sting in the NWO as a third man.
Thank God it wasn't.
We don't have any, real recollection of that being true. But that was just a rumor at that point, and I'm interested to see how that would actually have worked out. But later on, Sting would go on to join the NWO anyway, in a one-off faction. which in hindsight was kind of cool, but then again, it was like at this point everybody's in this shit. But I think at that point in time, you kind of had to realize like Sting was a prime time player, and in 1996,
Yeah.
Sting had took over by not even doing shit. Like you had a man in the Raptors week after week, and
Yes,
then
absolutely,
not
Chris. Of course, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Scott
Scott Hall.
did give him that idea, and he was wondering why he kept painting his face, and did you watch the
So
movie
what's
The
the
Crow
clip?
and all that.
What's the clip?
So the clip it's called The Crow Begins. You can find it on the WCW network on YouTube, and basically it's gonna have a quick rundown of him doing a promo in his last get up in the Sting outfit, where he was not necessarily black and white. So that was probably the last time you had Sting wear color, really. In his later years, he started to wear some color again after his run in TNA, and he had came back to WCW. He wore the red jacket still. I mean, if it was more color after the black and white, it was just a little red.
Oh, the Story of Crow Sting playlist.
Yes, it's a whole
Okay.
playlist of how that kind of lines out,
Yeah.
and it kind of gives you a good storyline of the entire Sting build up, the Sting tear down, the Sting in the Raptors, Sting just kind of coming out, Sting, repelling from the ceiling. Like nobody at
Yeah.
that point in time was doing it as often as Sting was, so it still was kind of his thing. Like people repelling from the Raptors, coming out and doing things. And I just felt like at one point in time you couldn't look at the TV and say, "Oh, you were ready to see everybody else," because when you were looking at the TV, you trying to see if Sting was going to actually wrestle tonight. And the only time he would come
He
out and
never
wrestle,
did.
the only time he wanted one person, and that
Hogan.
was the only thing he wanted. He wanted to see Hulk Hogan in the ring, and it
Yeah.
would never happen. Hulk would dodge him. Hulk would, see him come out in the ring. He would dip out and send everybody else in at him, but never. It was never one-on-one Hogan versus Sting until we finally got it. So
It was a
that may be
horrible
another
finish.
point later.
Yeah.
But I think that was another finish that we can honestly say that you had to be there to see it.
Yeah. Oh, fucking horrible. So, Chris, the funny thing about Scott Hall, is I loved the quote when he talked about the Sting. He's like, I'm not saying rip off Taker, but rip off Taker.
That's
So-
exactly what he said.
So I'm going to go with the next one, and this is one of my favorite events, and it's like people are like, oh Jesus Christ, here we go, some old thing. Is Spring Stampede '94 is on there? It is a fantastic pay-per-view. It's just before Hulk Hogan got to WCW, and was like, but it was so good. Like Regal and Pillman went to a draw. Which when Dusty Rhodes booked that, of course, it was all right. It was all right. He was trying something for sure. So no, I don't care. I'm never gonna insult Sting. Like Surfer Sting was my favorite, but Steve Austin wrestles. Steve Austin wrestles the Great Muta. Kareem ravishing Rick against Sting. One of the underrated matches is a Bunkhouse Buck against Dustin Rhodes. They have a bunkhouse match. It's really good and bloody, which they didn't do a ton of then. And then in the main event, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus the Nature Boy Ric Flair. That is like that such top level wrestling. I'm a big fan of it. I love that pay-per-view. And I think it's something that if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. And one thing in some of these events is like watch like the crowd. It's just such a different vibe, with the crowd back then. But that was from 1994. So George, that's my other pick. Then I got one more that I think we should that I really think we need to recognize. But go ahead.
So 96 was a big year. 97 was a big year for other superstars. In my mind, 97, Diamond Dallas Page probably had one of the better years of his career at that point. They kind of gave him the, oh, you're just a manager talk, you're not going to be good enough kind of thing. Diamond Dallas Page hit WCW in the 90s like crack in the 80s. He hit it hard, baby.
No, that was
And
91. Sorry.
his big year?
No,
Oh,
I'm talking to Kareem.
gotcha.
He
Yeah,
asked
no.
if that was when Luger came out of the box and tore Sting's knee up. So, sorry, back to DDP, 97.
97 DDP, different animal. He won the World Heavyweight Championship. Him and Booker T had a feud.
He didn't win the world
title.
title.
He won a U.S. title that year.
U.S. title.
He won a U.S. title that year, which
Him
goes
and
on
Savage,
to
though.
him. And him and Savage had one of the better feuds that I've actually seen in a long time.
That was so good.
Like, everybody kind of looks at Randy Savage as one of those people who was really good in WCW. And I'm going to tell you right now, he was a primetime player where he didn't have to be. He was literally the madness. Literally, I don't think he was, Randy Savage at all in WCW. He was just the madness. He would just go off and do random shit. Like, he was in the WCW and he was in the NWO. And most of his beefs outside of like Diamond Dallas Page was with the NWO, which was crazy as fuck. Like, there were some nights that
got that Jay-Z money.
There was some nights where Randy Savage would come out and fight just nobody but the NWO members. Like, I don't know what the beef was between Randy Savage and Nash, but that was something that kind of kept bubbling over. And it would happen during these matches where he would have with other superstars. Like, him and Diamond Dallas, they got into it real bad. And I think that's because they wanted Diamond Dallas to join the NWO at one point.
Yeah.
And he took Savage's ass out in a couple times. So
what you're suggesting if people would watch is it their match for Spring Stampede?
The Spring Stampede match specifically with Diamond Dallas Page and Randy Savage.
Right.
You talking about hard punches. You talking about, I'm thinking that I almost thought that Randy broke his goddamn back. I almost broke DDP's back by giving him a good move on them guardrails. But, that's just how they go. And then a lot of DDP's matches, they seem to kind of give you what a lot of WWE matches give you today is, they're going to fight off in the crowd. Nobody was going off in the crowd like DDP was back in the 90s. He kind of invented that whole I'm coming out the crowd to my music thing. Like Edge and Christian did that for a long time. Then they had the Shield. Then they had all these people. Go back and watch 1997 Diamond Dallas Page. They were looking like, when Edge and Christian started doing it, they were looking around trying to make sure that they were in the crowd. No, they was doing that for real in WCW because they like, he's over there. He's over there. Like, fans were like really just pointing out random areas. Cameramen were looking, trying to find Diamond Dallas Page. And then boom, you see him running out the crowd, hands in the air, just giving the diamond. And I'm gonna tell you right now, y'all think Jey Uso is hot? You can go anywhere. You can go anywhere and see this. So I'm just like, hey, I'm like this. It's like you have a slogan and
thanks for DDP yoga.
DDP yoga. I mean, the man he's so big to me in my mind. WCW gave that man the biggest set of legs he could ever walk with. And he walked with them big and strong. So
he was very good.
I'll never take it away that y'all guys need to watch DDP in 97. That was just like, he had other great matches. He had great years prior to, great years after. But 97 was his year. And he did a damn good job with it. Yeah,
and so my next pick, I think I'm going to throw in for the top 5 is it's on. I know it's on here. Is Ultimo Dragon versus Rey Mysterio from Spring Stampede 97. If they put the spring, I don't know if Spring Stampede 97 is on here in full yet, but if it is, like, watch that. But if you can't, watch Dragon versus Rey Mysterio. It's everything you expect. Like, it's that cruiserweight style done at like the highest level. It's like, because Ray was just so, and even to this day, Ray's still so good. And Dragon was notoriously underrated. I think he was a sensational. It just added such a different element to the show. Like, you had Hogan, you had all the big, And Spring Stampede is also the evening. I don't know if it's on here. Maybe that's why they're not going to show it. I hope they do. Is the night that Booker T said he's coming for Hulk Hogan.
And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, that moment
Wonderful match.
was probably one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in my life, because when I watched that live, I knew for a fact that Booker T was getting fired because I just knew he wasn't coming back. Because I'm gonna be like this. My mama watched it and she was just like, "Oh, you ain't watching this shit," and she cut it off, and I was just like,
Yeah, that's on pay-per-view.
I guess I'm not watching this something that you paid for, because back then you had to pay for them. So it was just like, man, seeing that, and then of course coming back on Monday night and they gave the Monday night recap, and it was just like
they ain't showing that.
They ain't showing that. That's not a highlight. But of course you had to see it. You had to be there to witness it. It was just like a time to be alive, man.
Yeah, they have like the first Clash of the Champions is on here, the first and the third one, which is also very good. Like Booker T against Bret Hart is on here, which is just like incredible. Like it is just so much good stuff that they uploaded so
98
fast.
Bret Hart versus Lex Luger for the U.S. title.
Yeah, like
WCW, and that kind of leads to my next point.
yeah.
WCW
on Thunder.
Episodic. Every week on Thunder, there was a main event that was pay-per-view worthy.
Until they kind of blew their wad and didn't create any new stars. Like but the second episode was it was like when they had Wet Weird set, and the second episode had Lee Marshall, Bobby Heenan, and Mike Tenay.
Yeah.
Which I loved because like I was a big Mike Tenay fan. But yeah, there's tons of Thunder episodes on there. Like I was lucky when I was a kid that I got we got cable relatively early. So like probably 91 or something like that, I guess. TBS was coming into Canada. I think it was coming in earlier, but we had gotten cable around that time. So I was watching like WCW in 90-91 because if it was wrestling, it was like, what, 6 o'clock? I'll watch that.
Mm-hmm.
I watch anything. So it just caught on, man. Like, and it's like you talk about the story of Sting. They have the story of Sting. I mean, they have the Clash of the Champions where he wrestled Ric Flair and became a superstar. They have, like I said, him and Luger for the tag titles. They have a lot of the Crow Sting stuff where he worked Hogan. I think I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's really good too.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic one as well. That's a classic. Because Eddie, like, I love that because Eddie was the big guy in that situation. So he ragdolled Ray in a lot of cases.
Yes.
And Eddie could do that. Eddie could do the submission holds on Ray, and it really Kevin Nash spoke about it with recently had a good take. He's like, Eddie always looked like he was like 6'4" until you saw him stand next to the referee, and you're like, oh, but he always had that. He always looked big, and that's a fantastic match. Like one of my favorites, George, is Sting and Ric Flair and Vader from Starrcade 1993. Great
his
match.
career.
Put his career on the line, and then it had his big and what a match! Between like Vader, who was such a good big man, and Rick. So tons of them up there, but I think the top 5. I think maybe we'll have to add Chris's to the show. Is Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio? I think should be in the top 5. So we'll put Chris. Thanks for the pick. But we got some honorable mentions there, George. What else are you looking at? What other honorable mentions? Like this is a great site. Like if you haven't, again, I can't recommend it enough. WWE's did a great job with the vault. They're really putting on stuff. Like they're really like Netflix has got a lot. Because I was worried because I watch it a lot. I use the service a lot because I love watching old wrestling. Like a lot of people watch old movies, kind of thing. And so I was worried, but there's a lot of great stuff you can find between the two things in Netflix. So George, what else? Give us a couple more. Like we talked about the Thunder episodes.
So
Greed, WCW Greed. Not that bad. Not great. Oh, no, that wasn't the one where Sid broke his ankle, but not that great. But there's a good match with Shane Helms is in there. I think Jason Jett worked somebody. He was Easy Money in WCW. I mean ECW. And he came in and he was working as Jason Jett, and it was like a really he was good. It was different. It wasn't terrible. I didn't think it was bad. Jason Jett worked Kwee, and then it had Elix Skipper and the Filthy versus Bray and Kidman. Stasiak worked Bam Bam. Hugh Morris worked. Oh yeah, and Chavo and I think Chavo and Shane Helms stole the show. Chavo and Shane Helms. It's a good event.
Is not necessarily something that you hear every day now. Like nobody wouldn't ever say that was one of the matches that kind of stole the showdown. But you know what? It did.
It was good.
WCW put. I think WCW's thing in the later years was they was trying to put matches together that they thought would sound good, and then the ones that they never really paid attention to were actually much better matches than what you actually felt like was planned. Like, I'm not gonna lie, some of the matches in the late 2000s were good matches. It just in hindsight, at the timing was terrible. Like they did have Booker T for the world title against Scott Steiner and Jeff Jarrett too. And there was a couple matches where they had a couple people where there was a lot of good talent actually being used, but it was just like it was too far too gone. So a lot of that late 2000s stuff that you feel like may not be all that good. Watch the younger talent at that point. Yeah, the older talent was actually already spazzing out on TV, but the younger talent was still trying to Jamie Noble, Shane Helms, Chavo Guerrero. They had Chuck Palumbo over there before he was actually shipped over to WWE.
I like
Chuck Palumbo was really, really good before he left.
Yeah. Tornado mentioned to us. I don't know if he told on the show, but he said it. He said it to us. He mentioned he wrestled Chuck Palumbo and had a lot of really good things to say. He's like, he was really good. Huge, enormous. I just, he did the Billy and Chuck thing, so I guess he made his mark, but he was a good wrestler too. Yeah, Alex Wright, I think, was kind of changing his thing. He got out of Berlin.
Alex Wright, I wish he would have had a longer career. Alex Wright was so fucking good. Like, the mid-card in WCW was actually so good, it was crazy. Disco Inferno, Alex Wright, Chavo Guerrero, Juventud Guerrero was a cruiserweight. Yeah. Like Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, Canyon. Like they had so many wrestlers that were really, really fucking good who could have been top stars in any other company. It's just that WCW was flooded with people, and at the same time, everybody needed time, I guess.
Well, I think one of the most underrated just botches that they had was Mike Awesome.
Mike Awesome was there too.
Mike Awesome in ECW was a monster. A 300. He was like 6'5", 295. He was agile. Didn't have the greatest promo, but he could go. And you turned him into the fat chick Thriller. I mean,
he had that bus. I ain't gonna lie. It was a great gimmick if you were going to be somebody else.
It was a horrible gimmick.
It would have been great for somebody else. It was great for somebody else. It was not great for Mike Awesome.
Not for him. No.
Mike Awesome needed somebody to beat up. And I think that was the thing. Mike Awesome came in, actually, didn't he come in with the ECW title?
He didn't have it, but he was the ECW champion, but he didn't have the belt.
Right.
There he wasn't going to throw it down, but he was the ECW champion at the time.
Right.
Legal
some
thing.
Kind of controversy with that as far as him being on WCW at that point. So
because
there was a lot of things. So Bam Bam Bigelow, another ECW person who kind of crossed over a little bit late, but he definitely had some interesting storylines.
I liked his feud with Goldberg. I thought that was a good.
Oh yes.
I thought that was a good matchup, but Bam Bam was hurt. Like you could see Bam Bam started to be like they put him in the hardcore stuff, but when him and Goldberg was so good because Bam Bam was such a good wrestler, and for such a big guy, he was just agile and able to do all that stuff. So I thought that was a good matchup for Bam Bam. But then he put him in the hardcore stuff, and a guy who was over. Two guys that I really loved mid card WCW. Norman Smiley was over. He did the wiggle.
Norman Smiley wiggle. I'm gonna tell you like this. Norman Smiley was so fun. Like he would hit you with that wiggle and put you in that chicken wing. It was over.
Yeah,
it was over.
And Laparca. Laparca was awesome.
Doesn't love Laparca, the chairman, the chairman of WCW. Yes, I think Laparca had a couple matches that I felt like were really good blockbuster matches. Seeing that he was the heaviest Latino wrestler,
yeah, he was the heaviest guy.
They had him ragdoll a lot of the cruiserweights and things like that. He would have a lot of matches where people really feared him in that chair. So yeah, and then there were matches like he had primetime matches with big players. Of course, they had him get squashed against Goldberg like everybody else at some point. But that was another thing. The Goldberg streak. I want y'all to go back and watch the Goldberg streak and see how that number really was. All right. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be 1 week where you see that motherfucker jump 10 wins. And I'm not going to lie. I was like, I done seen a lot of wrestling, but I know good and hell well he didn't wrestle 10 matches before Thursday. So it was just a lot of things. But that Goldberg run, I would like for y'all to watch that too.
Yeah. Another one, the Slamboree 98, it has the Cruiserweight Battle Royal. And I love it for two reasons. One, Chris Jericho's introductions, and the pop at the finish of the Battle Royal. When he pulls it off, and it's like, it was so good. And Jericho was like, he's going to rock till he drops Marty Jannetty. Just mispronouncing names.
Just all of it. Just giving. Jericho was great in WCW, too. Like, the last few years of WCW before Jericho
he left in 99.
Like 99, like the last few years, like it didn't really have a lot of Jericho action, but like 98, 99, big Jericho action before he left. And I think that was kind of where you understood Jericho was a huge star in a lot of aspects. Some people wouldn't say the same, but at the same time, I know for a fact Jericho was a primetime player in WCW before he left. He had a whole scandal with who was it?
It was he thought there was J.J. Dillon had a conspiracy against him.
Yes.
And he had Ralphus as his private security. Like, he was his WCW run was he was great. And they just botched him.
Do you remember his feud with Dean Malenko?
Yes.
And then he had the list of 1,000 holds that he could do.
And he's 1,004. Psychosis is super underrated.
Yeah, Psychosis is super underrated. I feel like, Jericho had that list. Like, he was a great promo. He's giving off this list of moves he can give because he's the Cruiserweight champ at that time. Like, it's just ridiculous. And, like, Dean Malenko comes out there and just kind of puts it on him. And, of course, Jericho tries to get out of the ring a couple times. It's just like, it's all good, fun, great wrestling promo. Like, before WWE started dropping the greatest promos and greatest matches of all time, WCW was doing the same thing for 83 weeks. So there's 83 weeks worth of material that you can go back and watch and see exactly some of this stuff that actually beat out some of the same stuff that you love today.
Yeah. So this one's going out for Kareem. Wrestle War 92, War Games. The Dangerous Alliance against Sting's Squadron. He's really good too. He's awesome. And there's a great story coming about him, I think, on the site soon. But so Dangerous Alliance had Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Larry Zbyszko against Ricky Steamboat, Barry Windham, Dustin Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, and Sting. It's a great match. It's really, really good. An awesome finish and just some amazing talent. Like the fact that, like, I love that they put that, and that match is on there. So much awesome stuff on that site. Kudos to them, for doing the right thing and, giving us all that great content.
Great content, lots of it, and it's free. So
Free.
definitely take some time to go on YouTube
If you don't
and
mind the
actually
odd
watch
ad.
some. I mean, who doesn't like a little bit of 2 minutes of why you should go to Chili's and try their, Big Mouth burgers? Why not? But at the same time, great content, free. You can take some time out and watch some of the greatest matches of all time from WCW with some of the best talent that you actually ever heard of and haven't at the same time.
Yeah, really good matches.
Really good matches.
Really good matches.
They were impressive to no end. I felt like those years of WCW, if you could just play them on repeat, like I feel like if you played an episode of Monday Night Raw and then Monday Nitro side by side, a lot of times you would get like, I don't know what to watch. But that was a good thing at that time because, of course, you had really great wrestling from two different programs who gave you a lot of things. This is now where you can watch WCW all the time, and you can also still watch the WWE stuff on Peacock and the Netflix and some of the networks and things like that. So there's a lot of content out there to be watched. But I know with everything going on right now, you won't take a whole bunch of time to go out and watch it. But like I say, the clips are perfect because it kind of gives you a little bit of insight as well as a couple matches here and there.
Yeah.
And then you can just kind of go on and try to see about some of the things that kind of connect to it as well.
Yeah. So one of the things, well, my last point, because I think we're going to have to wrap this up, baby, is my dad, because he was such a huge wrestling fan, loved Rey Mysterio. Loved him. He was like, I remember him saying he's like the wrestling Spider-Man. Just like he was just so, and so that's one of the things I always loved about my dad was he always loved those new guys. And just so if you get a chance, check out some of the Rey Mysterio matches like on there, because a lot of you might only know Rey Mysterio from the last number of years. He's had such a long career, but just so many. When he started, he was just unreal. He was the exception to the rule. Like, and everything he did was just so revolutionary. Like, because not everyone got ECW. Like, we got it in drips and drabs, but not really. And I had a couple friends who had tapes and stuff, but we eventually got out of Buffalo, I believe. And but like Ray was like just doing stuff that nobody else did. It was such a pioneer. And like, if you haven't seen that Rey Mysterio stuff, go back and watch it because it's incredible.
Young Rey Mysterio makes you appreciate old Rey Mysterio.
He's still good.
He's still amazing. Yeah. But young Rey Mysterio, if you think Rey Mysterio is good now, young Rey Mysterio is the only person better.
Oh my God,
There's nobody better than Rey Mysterio at what he does. It's literally him and younger him. Younger him could do all his older moves and then some. I remember when young Rey Mysterio came over into WWE, and right when he started to get a little bit bigger, his moveset was even different in his early WWE days as well. Yeah. Like he could do a lot. He was a little thicker and he could do a lot. And at the peak of Rey Mysterio, in my mind, 97, 98 was prime Rey Mysterio. He could do anything. Like, think of your favorite high flyer. Now think of their favorite high flyer. Then there's Rey Mysterio. That's their favorite high flyer. He was just that good. Like, the best. He made jumping over the ropes so clean. Like, he made everything look so crisp. Like, Rey Mysterio deserves his own appreciation at some point. Like, his own level of appreciation.
And he could sell with the mask. Like, you can get... And you got easy sympathy. I hated that they took the mask off. That was one of the decisions I didn't really, because that was the whole lore. That was like, it was the Mexican heritage, the Mexican lucha libre. Like, that was it. And I know Eric Bischoff has said they're trying to bring out more Ray's personality. And I mean, like, Kevin Nash eventually put him over, so that was awesome. But like, I loved Ray with the mask, man. I'm glad WWE brought him back because that's the whole thing. And but Ray and WCW was something else. So I hope that some folks who've watched this, if you're a new wrestling fan, you have never watched it, please check it out. I think you'll really have an appreciation for where the business has gone. It's a huge evolution. You go back and watch some of that stuff, even though like Nitro was cutting edge, Super Brawl Super Brawl 1 was less so. I mean, but yeah. So that's all I got to say, George. It's been a great show.
WCW has ran and started my whole wrestling lineage and career.
Yeah.
So I want y'all to, I always kind of say, I want y'all to go back and watch what I used to love. But at the same time, I know, like I say, you have a lot of things going on right now, but take a little time to see what yesteryear kind of looked like. I know it's a lot of stuff that we just kind of dropped on everybody, but it's a lot of time and a lot of free information that you can kind of go through. So like I say, whenever you got free time and you're just not thinking about nothing, you want to see some good wrestling, come over here to WCW, where the big boys play.
On that note, me and the big boy are going to say nighty-night. You go out. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. Check out 5countwrestling.com. I'm going to have a lot of stuff coming on there. So just be patient because there's I'm going to have a lot of good content, help contributors. And so, yeah, man, everyone have a good night. Appreciate you.
Peace.